Hey everyone, Coach Cindy here from Training, and I got a hot topic for you today. It's actually been inspired by some conversations I've been having with women lately. So I hope that one, you'll tune into the live or tune into the live with here with me or tune into the replay. And if you're here live, it's a great opportunity for you to ask me questions as well. So the goal with these trainings are basically to break down bigger topics, simplify them for you, but not just simplify them, is to help you take some, figure out what the practical steps are that you can start implementing. And the goal is to move you from being like a hoarder of information or always feeling you need more information to being an imperfect action taker, constantly doing, but not knowing that the need to be perfect isn't necessary in order to see results or to have sustainable results. So I always like knowing who are on these calls with me. So if you drop into the comments and let me know, are you here live? That's great. Or you can let me know if you are here on the replay. That's also great too. It's also like a little signal to say like, hey, I'm here trying to be an imperfect action taker. And I see Sarah's here. Happy Tuesday. All right, so we're talking about your body's change, your workouts didn't, and here's why you're stuck. I'm keeping it super blunt today because, again, like I said, this one's been coming up quite a bit. So I can dig into this topic. I would do a disservice if I didn't talk about mindset first. So let's dig into that first, and then we'll dig into the other parts as well. So we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about exercising in menopause and beyond. What I want you to think about is there no best and worst, wrong and right, no absolutes. That doesn't really exist. So at this stage of the game, it's important to listen to your brain and to the signals it gives you across the stages of life, and to understand your own responses. Like, how does it feel maybe in your body? What results do you see as a result of being consistent at doing the things? And you have to really consider, based on where you are at in life, the season of your life, your goals, your schedule too. So what most women forget is they now have maybe a demanding career, right? Or they have kids at different stages of life where they have different demands of you as well. And then you have a shift in your hormones as well, and other things shift too. And those kind of all need to be considered when it comes to your exercise. So things like, now I have knee pain. Now I don't sleep the best. Now I have high stress in my life. That even though you used to do it, it's been a very long time. So you can't start where you left off or what you have always relied on. And of course, if you are under or overweight as well. So this is basically to say, like, hey, a lot of women say, like, what I used to do just stopped working. I don't know why it stopped working. I'm doing all of the things and it's not working. But what we aren't considering is that our life has switched dramatically. So we used to have young kids where we chased around, and now you have older kids, and you used to have an active job, like maybe you waitressed, and now you have a sedentary job where you're working at your desk, right? You used to be able to get to the gym for that 1 hour workout or the 45, and it made all of the difference. And now you're like, I'm doing those things and it's not helping me. You used to be able to cut out certain foods, and then it used to be like, hey, I would just cut out the snacking or cut or clean up my diet, and that would work. And then it stops working, right? Not to mention that we also have all kinds of different messages coming at us as well, not only just in perimenopause and menopause, but just generally as women as well. And so it makes the messaging all confusing as well. So we really have to consider, like, hey, am I in the same season of life that I was in when this worked in? Am I the exact same person, and the demands of my life are the exact same? Does my body respond the same way that it used to, or has that changed too? So the hardest part about listening to your body is your brain. It kind of gets in the way. I have no energy to do the things, but want the energy. I want to eat healthy, but also want to eat the cake and drink the wine. I want to exercise, but I just don't feel good and I'm not motivated. So in a nutshell, we can kind of talk ourselves in circles and easily convince ourselves that we can't do this. And it's a tricky spot to be in. This body and mind battle becomes the reality is this: your health doesn't wait for you to make up your mind to get the energy or to get the motivation or to be motivated, right? Things like your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your insulin resistance, your fatty liver, to name a few, they don't wait for you to get motivated to be ready. And that's the thing that we have to sit in, right? Is now that we're a little bit older, one is we are closer to the age of our parents. And if your parents are not aging well or have a lot of health issues, that can then weigh heavy on your mind. You're constantly thinking about it, right? I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to feel that way. And you're moving closer to that age. So you got to think about that in that sense. But we think about, oh, I'm just not motivated. I can't do it. I just have no time. I just have no energy. But we have to also think about that's the story we can be stuck in, and all those things can be true. But your health doesn't care. It doesn't give two shits about all of that. It's still going to move at the rate that it needs to move at based on your, all kinds of different things. Sure, genetics and family history play a role, but so do your habits, your consistent habits around stress management and sleep, exercise, nutrition, all of those things also impact your health habits. So sometimes it's like we really have to step out of the story of, I'm good and then I'm not good. I'll do it and then I don't do it. And then, I'm struggling with energy and struggling with motivation, because now we have to also think about when maybe we didn't have to think about it when we were in our 20s and our 30s. We have to think about it now. And we have to think about it. You're not doom and gloom for menopause or perimenopause. It can be if you're not going to do anything about it, if you're not going to change any of your habits to support your hormones, to give your hormones a healthy and thriving environment to be in, then it can feel like that way. So it's like we got this compounding, narrowing effect that's kind of happened. So it kind of reminds me of this, and I can't remember who said it, to kind of give them credit. So it goes like this. So let me just pull it up and I'll read it here. So first I was dying to finish high school and start college, and then I was dying to finish college and start working, and then I was dying to marry and have children, and then I was dying for my children to grow old enough for school so I could return to work, and then I was dying to retire, and now I'm dying, and suddenly I realize I forgot to live. And I would add, your body's been waiting for you to live too, not just survive the kind of to-do list as well. So when you wait until everything feels like it's falling apart to set a boundary or to kind of take care of yourself, you're asking your body to recover from survival mode. That's not coaching your body up. It's trying to rebuild it from burnout and from missing the chance to teach your body how to function well before it crashes. Is this making sense here? Is this making sense in the sense of like your health doesn't stop no matter how unmotivated or undisciplined or how much lack of energy or how you like feel confused or don't have a lot of, how you have too much information and don't know what to do with it? It does not matter. It's going to do what it needs to do. Your hormones, if they're not giving the environment that they need to like be thriving, just think of it like a plant. If I'm not watering it, it doesn't have sunlight, I'm not taking care of it, it's not going to thrive. Our body's like a house plant like that in that sense. And then we're moving closer to that age where we're looking at our parents and we're saying, I want to be able to move well, I want to be able to pick myself off the floor, I want to be able to keep up with my grandkids, I want to have energy, I don't want to have to take all these naps, like whatever that looks like, I don't want to have all these health complications. So now it's not just about, being in a smaller body, losing the weight. It's now we got hormones to consider, and now we got this whole health outcome to consider as well, right? And so when you think about what I just read to you, right, it's like we're constantly never in the present moment, and then we're constantly delaying our gratification or delaying the present for into the future, okay, tomorrow, next week, okay, in the new year, okay, after Easter, okay, after March break, that sort of thing. So okay, so before we really dig into exercise and perimenopause, let's first understand this. We don't get fitter during the actual exercises. I know. So here's how it works. We get fitter from the stimulus exercise creates through proper nutrition. That's why we talk about eating enough to build and preserve muscle and eating the protein and the post-workout nutrition. And your muscles also grow or you get fitter through recovery days off, varying up your training and improving your sleep. So what we often think is like, okay, we go to the gym and then we think when we go to the gym, that's when we're going to build our muscle, but it's actually not. It's a lot of it is actually coming from what you do after the fact. It's coming from your nutrition and it's coming from your recovery as well. And it's coming from how you set up your workouts too. So let me give you a practical example. If you were working out the same muscle group all the time or always doing high intensity every day, 5 days a week, you aren't going to recover to be able to hit those intensities again. So although exercise is good for you, it is a stressor on the body, and we want to we want it to be a good stressor, one we can kind of like recover from, which becomes more important in perimenopause. So a good stressor challenges you but lets you recover. You should feel worked, not wrecked. If you're too sore for days or exhausted or moody, that's maybe like your barometer to say like, hey, that's too much. So when you are in your reproductive years, you can get away with anything because hormones are kind of like working for us. It's different in perimenopause than in starting into menopause. So now your training needs to change because you're changing, and now you have to consider the volume versus the intensity of your training as well. So I'll give you an example of someone who is like constant knee pain. So walking a lot, running a lot, working out a lot. It's like, and then, working out and doing jumping. And so we have to decrease the volume and then increase and look at the intentionality behind the workouts that we're doing in order to allow her body to recover. And for her, it meant I don't want knee pain that's constantly on my mind, constantly in my brain. I can constantly feel it. So, what do I mean when I say the good kind of stress? Well, it's the challenge your body needs to kind of grow stronger, not weaker, if that makes sense. So, when you lift, your body senses that stress and says, okay, next time we need to be ready for this. So, it rebuilds and muscles, bones, metabolism, and even your confidence. That's what we call adaptation. It's not just about doing more, it's about recovering better. So, if you're constantly trained hard without recovery, your body never adapts, it just breaks down. It never you're never able to push yourself, even though you might be sweating a lot or breathing really heavy or feel like you just don't have the same oomph, or you just don't give your body the reason to change because it's same. So the magic is in kind of that middle ground. You want enough of that good stress, right? Let's say from your workouts, you want enough recovery as well, and then you want to rinse and repeat that cycle. So sleep is your body's reset button. That's kind of when your growth hormone gets released, your muscle repair happens, and that's when cortisol regulation happens. And you can't out train bad sleep. There's something called sleep debt. Google it if you like, but it's basically like, a couple of nights sleep, and then it's like you can accumulate. And then for some people, it makes it harder and harder for them to bounce back. So in your 20s and your 30s, you could get away with random workouts or late nights or skipping rest days. But in your 40s, 50s, and beyond, you have your hormones, muscle recovery, and stress response that all shifts. So now you have to be more intentional. So your body is able to adapt, but it needs the right dose of stress. That's why progressive strength training, sleep, and nutrition matter more than ever when you're in kind of this hormonal state and beyond. So let's spend some time on high intensity training. So when you do high intensity training, you actually want to be able to hit those high intensities. You can ensure you are hitting those high intensities by having low intensity days built in, keeping high intensity short with equal amounts of low intensity built in. So that's like your work to rest ratio, and then recovery days and rest days. So in perimenopause, you don't have the benefit of estrogen to support anti-inflammatory responses, which affects your recovery. And we'll talk a little bit more about inflammation in just a bit. So what might this look like? I'll give you a few options. So for example, and this might hit hard better for somebody who has been consistent with their workouts already and already doing some weightlifting and high intensity, and it's just not producing the results you want. This is how you could tweak it. So you could do high intensity on Monday, weightlifting on Tuesday, or rest, yoga, or Pilates, something that's a little bit lower intensity on Wednesday. You could do high intensity again on Thursday, weightlifting on Friday. Saturday could be your rest, your yoga, or Pilates, and then your Sunday is lifting. Or you could look at weightlifting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with short, high intensity bursts post weight, meaning like you might do like a 4-minute Tabata post your weights, and then moderate to light intensity on Tuesday. Thursday be mobility and your flexibility. Saturday be some sort of light intensity, and then Sunday rest. So those are two different ways you could set up your work schedule so that you're in this phase of giving yourself a good stress through your workouts, but also the recovery that you needed to support, your hormones, your cortisol, your muscle building, muscle preservation, all of those sorts of things, right? And then not let it affect your sleep. So this is a way that you could kind of merge those two together, is you can choose schedule 1 or schedule 2. So let's talk about stiffness and body aches, and because that kind of happens more in perimenopause, right? There needs to be mobilization or flexibility and stretching on top of intensity and strength. A lot of women, when I start coaching them or whatever, and I'll be like, did you stretch after your workout? No, I didn't. It's because if it's a time issue, I don't know how to stretch, I don't know what to do. Or you went straight into the workout without any stretching. But in this stage of the game, you need mobilization, you need flexibility, and you need stretching on top of the intensity and strengths. So why? Well, the tissue needs to be ready for the movement, and you need full range of movement so you can add heavier loads and avoid injuries, right? So this is where warm-ups become really important, and stretching at the end of your sessions too, using a variety of different angles. Like when I'm in the gym with clients, we sometimes stretch on the floor, sometimes with bands, sometimes without. Sometimes we're stretching on the rig, sometimes we're stretching on the wall, sometimes we're using a box, sometimes we're using a dumbbell, right? And warm-ups with dynamic stretching, not static stretching. So dynamic stretching means that, for example, like if I'm doing lunges for my dynamic stretching with the reach, it's like I'm lunging and reaching versus kind of holding that position. That's a static position. And you can include some cardio, but here's what you need to know about your warm up is if you're going into a total body workout or you're going into an upper body workout, your treadmill does nothing to warm up your upper body. Sure, it's going to warm up your heart and get your heart going, maybe get your cardio up, but does nothing to warm up the muscles that you're going to be using. Not only that, we need to think about range of motion. So lunging not in small steps, but big ones, challenging the depth of your squats, for example. On the elliptical, it's playing with that ramp. When on the treadmill, it's playing around with the incline and even your running stride. But this also applies to lifting. So for example, you're doing a shoulder exercise. You don't want to do an overhead press. You have to think about planes and angles. So you can think about lateral raises. You can think about upright rows. You can think about front raises, right? So think about planes and angles for that one specific muscle group. So why do we have to think about this more in perimenopause and menopause? So just think about like this, like as we age, right, our joints, our ligaments, and our tendons change. They're made mostly of collagen. So picture it like thousands of tiny rope strands kind of twisted together. Over time, the glue that kind of holds those strands tight gets kind of like, it isn't as strong. It's like a little bit more flexible. And that's why your body starts to feel stiffer, less flexible. Your body starts to feel a little bit stiffer. It's kind of like bound up. So you got to think about like, hey, changes are happening in your joints, your ligaments, and your tendons. And that's all, think about like tiny rope strands that are all kind of twisted together. So over time, and they're the glue, right? But over time, they just become a little bit less flexible, and then that's when you become really stiff when you get out of bed, or really stiff the next day after your workouts, right? So when you lose range of motion, meaning your joints can't move freely, your body starts compensating. That's when injuries happen. The knee overworks because the hip doesn't move. The shoulder hurts because the spine's tight. You're not falling apart. You just have a lot of like compensations because you have some restriction in your body. So you can change this at any age, like we mentioned, unless arthritis, sure, if you have arthritis, exercise is great. Movement is also good. But arthritis has physical changes to the bone. Your tissue can still adapt. You can't build strength on dysfunction. And you have to first earn your movement, then earn your muscle. Then you can load the muscle. And a lot of people, because they used to lift heavy, they think they can just go back into it. Or now the messaging is lift really heavy in perimenopause or menopause. So we're starting there, but there's this fear of movement as well. So first you got to make sure that you move really well. Then you got to earn your muscle by putting in the reps, and then you can start loading the muscle as well. So you don't need to overhaul everything. You can start with one shift, like lifting twice a week or adding a recovery day. Your body doesn't need perfect. It just needs like obviously consistency, right? Okay, so your training also needs to change based on your needs and your goals. So for example, if you want to lose weight, this means you're losing overall body mass that can include fat, muscle, and even water. So when you say, I want to lose weight, oftentimes what you're referring to is a number on the scale, which actually means losing fat. That's actually what we want, but we say losing weight. When you lose weight, you don't get to dictate where it comes from. So you don't get to say like, hey, I want to just lose my belly fat. I just want to lose this flab in my arms. I just want to lose the weight around my legs. It's actually, you have to lose weight overall to lose weight overall, you can lose fat, you could lose muscle, and you can even lose water. So most diet programs stop there. You see the number drop, but maybe your energy, your metabolism kind of takes, and maybe your shape doesn't actually change at all. Just maybe the number on the scale does, but nothing else kind of changes. That's why you can be lighter but still soft, tired, or fluffy. So weight loss isn't the full picture, it's just lighter, not necessarily better. Why am I saying that? For the reasons why I just explained. Because weight loss is about losing fat, losing muscle, and even water, right? And so what we actually want is to build or preserve muscle and lose body fat. The second part, the reason why your workouts need to change or your training needs to work based on your needs and goals is because you're strong. So strength is a skill. It's how well your body can produce and control force, essentially. Essentially force being like pushing, pulling, squatting, or carrying groceries up the stairs. You can get stronger without changing your scale weight at all. It's your nervous system learning to fire more efficiently. So stronger doesn't always look different at first, but you feel it. You have more energy, you have more confidence, you have more power, more stability. My clients will say I just have more stamina in my workouts as well. So if you're saying like, hey, I want to lose weight, but I also want to get strong. Well, then you now have a workout program that needs to meet two goals, not just one goal. So, does that mean that the program you did in your 20s and your 30s will meet your body where it's at now that you're in perimenopause or menopause? No, you need to change that, right? You need to have the right kind of training program to meet those two goals at once. Then let's say you want to gain muscle. This is what changes the shape of your body. And it's simply the shape of your body because I'm looking around because let's say fat takes up this much space in your body and muscle takes up this space in your body. The more muscle you have, that's the reason why you're going to look smaller in your body, is because you have more of this and less of this taking up your space. It is a myth to believe that muscle weighs less than fat, right? So you're building lean tissue, and when you burn lean tissue, that burns more calories. It supports your joints, it balances your hormones like your glucose, your metabolism, your insulin sensitivity, and it gives you tone and definition. And don't forget that muscle cross communicates with the bone. So muscle is what makes weight loss look good. So you can gain muscle, you can lose inches and have the scale barely move. That's the win most women miss because they're just so focused on the wrong metric, right? Think of it like this: losing weight can make you smaller, getting stronger makes you capable, gaining muscle makes you more resilient. So all of my women will do the pictures, weight, and measurements. That's how we always do the physical indicators of success, because often we'll see lots of changes, like particularly as you get leaner. We'll see lots of changes in the pictures, but very minimal changes in the inches and in the scale. For others, it's like you're going to see so much more inches lost than you are going to be on the scale, where other people are vice versa. So that's why when you're looking to say like, hey, my goal is to gain muscle now, then we need to change the way we're measuring progress, as not only just the workouts, but how we're measuring progress to be able to see that. And when you focus on muscle and strength first, fat loss becomes a side effect. And what I like about that is then it becomes like the pressure comes off the weight loss or the fat loss, because it's automatically going to happen if your focus is on muscle first, right? And sometimes it's just changing into the muscle building game versus the weight loss game is enough to restructure the way you eat, think about your workouts a little bit different, and then finally get out of the weight loss game that you've been playing on and off for years and years and years. So yeah, so 35 to 45 is kind of like that critical age to kind of set your standard for building muscle, because you still have some estrogen and it has a profound effect on muscle building synthesis. So think anti-inflammatory. When inflammation is high, muscle synthesis decreases. So I told you I was going to talk about inflammation. We're going to go into that next, but that kind of sets it up nicely for you to think about it. It's like, wait a minute, let this hit home. When my inflammation is high, muscle synthesis decreases, the ability to put on muscle. So let's talk about inflammation. So inflammation isn't always bad. It's your body's natural way of repairing and healing. The problem is when it never kind of shuts off. So when inflammation stays high, your body can hear the signals. It can't hear the signals that it's telling it to recover or build muscle or burn fat. It's like trying to have a conversation in a room full of noise. The message gets lost. So when estrogen starts to drop in perimenopause and postmenopause, everything that used to work starts to feel really like a lot harder. About 40 to 50% of women develop low bone density during this time, meaning that there's a higher risk of fractures. Estrogen also supports myosin and actin. So what that is the proteins that make muscles kind of contract. And so when estrogen drops, so does your strength signal. And cortisol, your stress hormone, tends to set higher too. And when you add long, moderate intensity workouts on top of that, it never has a chance to come down. So you end up tired, you end up sore, and you end up inflamed, but not actually stronger or not actually seeing the changes that you want to see. Does that make sense for inflammation there? So we can also talk about cortisol because that's the buzzword right now. That's been coming up in social media everywhere, but also when I'm talking to women, maybe it's my cortisol. So where does it kind of all fit in? Cortisol isn't bad either. You need it. It helps you wake up. It helps you train. It helps you respond to stress. But when it's constantly elevated, especially in perimenopause, when your baseline levels are already higher, it becomes part of the problem. And here's where most women fall into the trap. They're doing everything right. They're working out harder, eating cleaner, pushing through fatigue. But what's really happening is a cascade of like chronic stressors. Let's say maybe it's over exercising, maybe it's under fueling. If you're training hard but always tired or hungry at night or not seeing muscle tone, you're likely under eating or the amount of stress for the amount of stress that you're placing on your body. And then poor sleep, or there's a lot more of a mental load or emotional stress. All of that tells the hypothalamus, the part of your brain that regulates your hormones, we're under threat. Slow everything down. Slow it down. Your metabolism, your recovery, your hormones, they all start whispering instead of responding. That's why you can feel like you're doing your best, but still not seeing the results. So, a common question I really get around this is, how do I know my cortisol is high? If you're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., feeling wired but tired, craving sugar or coffee all day, those are all kind of cortisol clues. This isn't a kind of a black and white, it's kind of like shades of gray. Your healthy habits might actually be pushing your body into survival mode. So think about the person who never takes the day off, constantly in moderate intensity exercise, constantly doing intensity with not enough recovery, doesn't, struggles to get to sleep or stay asleep, all those things. We want to be able to train smarter, fuel better, and create safety in our system so it can finally respond again. So, strength training lowers inflammation and teaches your body to use the glucose differently. It builds muscle, which fights insulin resistance and reduces your body's need to pump out cortisol. That's a huge win. That's why continuous moderate intensity workouts like long cardio sessions can backfire. It isn't to say that you don't include them. It's to say that when you think about that's all you do, or that's the we think about the ratio of your workouts or time spent working out, if you're spending a lot more in that zone and not feeling or seeing what you want to see, then we need to change the ratio of right that. So the answer isn't more cardio, it's smart training that teaches your body to kind of adapt and recover. So strength training builds muscle, improves insulin sensitivity, and lowers inflammation over time. Intervals and resistance, they use the glucose, they balance hormones and reduce the noise that chronic inflammation creates. And movement variety, like mixing your walking, your mobility, your lifting, and rest, all the things we talk about. So, and let me clear this up, cardio isn't off the table like I just said. It's just not the main course anymore. It's the side dish. It supports your heart, your mood, and your recovery when used strategically, not necessarily daily. So when you train right, you teach your body to lower inflammation. You teach it to balance your cortisol and rebuild strength, not burn it out. Muscle is really medicine here. So it's how you're going to use up your glucose. It's how you're going to fight insulin resistance. It's how you're going to protect your bones, and you're going to keep your hormones working with you, not against you. So what do I mean with you? So when you train and fuel right, your hormones do what they're meant to do. Cortisol rises, then it falls, insulin stays steady, estrogen supports recovery, right? It's not like your hormones go away. It's like they do what they need to be doing, what they have been doing. When you overtrain and undereat, those hormones get stuck in overdrive. So you don't need to do more, you need to do what works now. Your body isn't fighting you, it's actually waiting for you to listen. So today's training was really about, hey, you're recognizing that your body has changed because now you're in perimenopause and menopause. You're starting to see physical shifts, but mentally and emotionally, you're starting to feel the shifts too. We were just specifically looking at the workout side of things, not the nutrition, not the recovery, although we touched on those things here. But we were looking at, okay, what are the variables we need to play around with in our workouts in order to feel like we're not stuck, but also to continue to support our body during this menopausal hormonal transition, basically. So we covered a lot, right? We covered kind of the mindset part of things here is, that some women are in denial of the stage that they're at. And so they keep reverting back to what they used to do versus meeting them where they're at. And sometimes it's because of denial, but sometimes it's also because of, I don't know what to do. I only know how to do that. I don't know how to do this, right? And a lot of women, I'll just be honest and be frank, gave up way too early to be able to see any kind of shifts or changes that would support themselves. And there are other women who resign themselves to, supplementation or medical interventions in order to help without considering I could do those things and also give my hormones a really good environment to support the supplements that I'm using. Let's say it's HRT or estrogen passage or progesterone, for example, is like to support those so that it can work optimally as well. It's the same thing if you never change your diet, don't eat fiber, don't eat vegetables, and you just take a probiotic, the probiotic isn't going to work like it's intended. Right. And then we talked about, hey, how come your body just feels different in perimenopause or menopause, right? And so, we talked about the need for balance between, building strength and building recovery as well. And it's not what would that look like? What would a potential schedule look like where you balancing, some low intensity, so, maybe it's some long walks or some, steady state runs, balanced with some workouts, balanced some training, balanced with some interval or higher intensity, and balanced with some rest and recovery as well, and why that was important there while you're in this stage. And then we looked at, okay, well, what are the goals that you want to reach, and do your workouts now meet your goals? If your goal is weight loss, do you have the program that meets that? If your goal is to get strong, do you have the program that meets that? Same with gaining muscle. And then we talked about inflammation, how it kind of interrupts that signal. It kind of gets a little bit noisy there, and it makes it harder for you, right? Makes it harder because makes it harder to recover, makes it harder to kind of build that muscle. We talked about where cortisol fits in, right? And so, and how you know if you have higher cortisol or some of the signs and symptoms that your body could send. And then we talked about strength training and how it lowers inflammation, teaches your body to use glucose efficiently, right? And we talked about all of the ways that it can support your hormonal profile, or where you are kind of in life, basically. So today's trainings was kind of like today's training was to help you take a broader topic, simplify it, and give you some practical, actionable steps. Your job now, which I hope you'll take me up on it, is to head to the comments and tell me what's one takeaway or one imperfect action you're going to take as a result of listening to this. Is listen, nothing is going to change if you listen to this. In fact, if you listen to enough of these, whether from me or for other people, what happens is you start to widen the gap between what you know and you're just not doing it. And then what else up happening is you layer that on top of feeling confused and not knowing what to do or where to start. So with everything you listen, you have to think about, well, what's one action I can take on a consistent basis, even though it's imperfect, even though it's small, so that you start to close that gap between what you know and what you actually do. So I'd love for you to pop into the comments and tell me what that is. This is one way I support women, is through this community and through these trainings. However, I also support women through coaching in various different ways. And if you're interested in learning more about coaching, then just reach out. I'm just going to ask you about your goals, and I'm going to ask you about your obstacles, and then we can have a conversation from there. Maybe we'll jump on a call, and then at least it's going to give you some clarity and some starting point as well. All right, I'm Coach Cindy, signing off.